Hi, everyone, and welcome to TheresaC TV, the place to be for rich characters, inspiring stories, and tips and strategies to help you take your life and your business to the next level. Really excited to have you here tonight. I am stoked because I have not only someone who is extremely successful, major nice, which is a commodity these days, but someone I can call a friend. I know her, Miss Sonja Warfield, and we're going to get to her story in just a minute. But for those of you who have tuned into this broadcast before, you know how I like to start. We're not going to rush into anything. We're really going to go with the flow and make sure that we are doing the best service that we can for everyone who is watching. And there are a few housekeeping items that I need your help with. So I know it's right after work and everybody's like rushing to get to their computers and to get to a great place where they can watch our show. So I'm going to take my time getting started. Please stick with me. I know a lot of people are getting off work and they're making their way home. We want everybody tuning in. I know that there are some folks who are, trying to get dinner started or finished. So we're going to give our people some time to get to the computer and to get themselves situated. While we're waiting, if you would do me a favor in the Google Hangout, for all of you who are watching, just help us out with mic check and sound and video. Can you see me? I know it may be a little grainy. That will clear up. But can you hear me okay? And if you could please just type into the Google Hangout area. I can hear you, Teresa. I hear you loud and clear, girl. Just let me know that you can hear me, and we will check and just make sure that all is square with just the technical stuff. We want you to get as much from this show as possible. So if you can hear me, again, please go ahead and type into the chat room, Teresa. I hear you. I'm waiting. If you're in Facebook, we have a wonderful, vibrant, engaging, very active Facebook group that's associated with this teleseries. If you would go to Women Entrepreneurs International in Facebook, again, Women Entrepreneurs International in Facebook. If you're there, go ahead and type in Teresa, I can hear you. And I can see you. All right, checking over there as well. Awesome. Very cool. So we are going to go ahead and get the show started. And I want everyone to just take a minute to really gather in positive energy, gather in their intention for this time tonight. We're going to have a really great time, and we're really going to provide you with tips and strategies and just a lot of great feedback. This is not just a conversation between Sonia and I. We need you to be engaged too. The more you're engaged, the better this show is. There will come a time during the show where I'll open up the phone lines. So if you have a question for Sonia, if you have a question for me, feel free to go ahead and dial in. You can ask your question live on the air. That telephone number to dial is 425 440 5100. Again, the number is 425 440 5100. and use the code 196792 pound. Again, 196792 pound. And that's going to get you into the live show so you can go ahead and get all of your questions in and find out how you can be a writer, how you can get your book published, or maybe even how you can be a business owner and start your business out without getting yourself stressed. So, those are the housekeeping things. Just make sure that if for some reason you can't hear us, let us know. If you have a question, call that number, press *2, dial that number at any time during the show, and go ahead and get yourself in line to ask the question. Again, one more time, that telephone number is 425 440 5100, and the code is 196792. So, with that said, you're like, who are you, lady, talking on the screen? I'm glad you asked. I'd love to introduce myself. I am Teresa Campbell, your humble host of TheresaC TV. I am the CEO of Be Next Entertainment, and I have had some experiences, we'll say, on this journey of entrepreneurship and the freedom that that brings when you have your own business. This is not my first business, but it is my passion business. It's what I love, it's what I do, it's who I am. And we help businesses, mainly small businesses, primarily those in entertainment, fashion, and the arts industries, really carve out a niche for themselves, carve out a very clear message for themselves so that they can reach their audience and their audience knows who they are and they will buy from them. So, our focus is again on personal branding and marketing, integrated marketing specifically. So that's my spiel, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Um, with that said, I again from California, live in California, originally from North Carolina, and this journey to California was again a very interesting one. A probably not really pretty. Despite the earrings and the hair, how I've gotten to this point was not a pretty one. And I'll just tell you really briefly. I was married, divorced, have two children. And after my mother passed away in 2006, it really, or 2007, excuse me, it really turned my life upside down. For about a year straight, I thought of committing suicide. For a year straight, I cried in the shower. For a year straight, I really walked around not knowing who I was or what my purpose was anymore. I really felt that life, gave me a bad hand. My mother was my best friend. Anyone who knew me knew that. And to have her leave in the middle of the night was just, I could not wrap my head around that. And the intellectual that I am wanted an answer. And I think you may be able to relate to something really bad happening to you, or maybe not even bad, just something you couldn't answer. And you want God, you want the universe to give you a reason as to why. And I spent a year, to be honest, probably more than that, from the time my mother passed away until the time I probably got to this Teresa was maybe 3 years. And, you know, that Teresa, if you saw her, she was holding it together. I was still working at the studio. I was still doing all that I was supposed to be doing. But inside, my soul was just ripped apart. And I did the best that I could to put those shreds of my soul back together. And with that came this journey of finding out what life was really all about. And on the end of that journey came well, I'm going to do me and I'm going to live life the best that I can. That includes going back to my passion of having a business. That first year, I'll be honest with you again, I sucked at it. I really did the best that I could, but I made mistakes along the way. I'll just be frank with you. Maybe you know all the right people, you have all the right spreadsheets, you have the presentations, but it's still not happening for you. It's still not working. You're smart, you're educated, and you're thinking to yourself, why is this not working? And I got to that point in business where I thought, look, something's not right. And with that, I began this journey, even going even deeper into, um, what you think is what your reality is. And who you are on the inside of your brain is really what will show up in your life. And I realized that those two were at odds. What I thought about myself on the inside and what showed up on the outside were two different people. And then I began this journey of making them one, really, and making sure that who I was on the inside was what I presented on the outside. And voila, here I am. Easy, but not so easy. Some of the things I did, I'll share with you very quickly, was to really surround yourself with a great support team. Having a business is not easy. It's very rewarding, but you cannot do it alone. Writing a book, and I'm sure Sonja will attest to this, is very rewarding, but you cannot do it alone. You will need people to at least make introductions for you, give you tips, and maybe even tell you that where you're going is not the right way. You need mentors, you need collaborators, you need a mastermind, you need people who will really shore you up and help you get to your promised land. And the other thing is to really have a plan and focus on your plan. I had 10 business plans. I had a plan for everything. I will tell you that once you focus on one prize, get your mindset on one prize, then the path becomes very wide and very clear. And I'll leave you with that. Um, don't be disheartened. There will be obstacles, there will be hurdles, there will be haters, there will be people that tell you you cannot do that, you should not do that, why would you do that? It's okay. Just know that that will happen, and meditate on who you really are and what you really want and focus on your prize. That is the foundation of our business here. I don't really jump into business without really understanding the relationship that I'm entering into. And so the clients that I have tend to be those that I love working for, that I love, you know, helping them build their businesses up. I love those that I can have conversations with. And I think that stems from really having this foundation of, you know, just knowing who you are, what you want, and going towards that without any apprehension. So that's where we are. That's who I am. This program, our goal is to bring to you every Thursday at 6 p.m. right here. So if you like what you see, please tell your friends. Please tune in again. If you would like to have a spotlight here, I'd love to talk to you. If you know of someone else you think would be great for this program, please let me know. Again, our focus is on entertainment, arts, media, fashion. So, with that said, I am going to introduce Miss Sonja Warfield. And I'm sorry, before I do that, I just want to go to the phone lines really quickly and over to Google Hangout to see who we have tuning in. I'm going to head over to Google and let's see. We have, oh boy, we have a lot of people tuning in here. Reza, we have Victoria, and now here I'm looking at Google Hangouts. We have Bonafide, Literary Show, Adrian. We have TJ, hey, who's tuning in. Thank you so much, everyone. Adrian is here with us as well. Thank you so much for supporting not only women, but those who are really trying to make a difference in the world. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So, with that said, I will introduce our very, very, very special guest tonight, Miss Sonja Warfield.
Hi, everyone.
Sonja is 2 seconds, my dear. Sonja is the 1 second. Bear with me. Sonja, prepare yourself. If you
Can you hear me?
yes,
Are we
2 seconds.
Are we good? Oh.
All right. So Sonja, thank you everyone for your patience. I really appreciate it. Awesome. So, real quickly, I will tell this story. When people ask me, well, how do you, the easiest answer is relationships. And the way that I came to know Sonja was through a relationship, a friend that we have in common. So if you are wondering how to get your book published, how to meet the right people, never judge anyone by their cover. Say hi to everyone because you never know who may be the person who can make that great introduction for you. So, with that said, Sonja Warfield wrote for Will and Grace from 2003 to 2005. She then went on to serve as executive story editor on the ABC comedy The Game. I'm sorry, Jake with John Stamos. Ms. Warfield has had consecutive development deals with Sony Pictures. She's written Sony Pictures Television, excuse me. She's written 2 television pilots for NBC, 2 pilots for HBO, and 1 for ABC. She has also rewritten projects for ABC Family and Hulu. In 2014, Ms. Warfield was the executive story editor on the hit BET series The Game. Ms. Warfield adapted a novel into a screenplay for Hilary Swank's production company, 2S and Alcon Entertainment. And finally, what we've all been waiting for, she has written a new book called The Big Fat Negro. Get your lazy ass off of my couch. Mama, forgive me, which is available right now on Amazon. She also serves as an adjunct professor at the University of Southern California, USC. Woo woo! And really, really, really excited to have her here. She teaches there in the School of Cinematic Arts. She also earned her BA in Cinema Television from USC, Critical Studies there. So, really excited to have Sonja here. And Sonja will talk about the book. Feel free to ask your questions about the book. And more importantly, she's going to talk to us about women's empowerment and her journey and the relationships and learnings that she's had along the way with regards to women's empowerment. So, with that said, Ladies and gentlemen, I love to introduce to you Miss Sonja Warfield. Yay! You're on, Sonja. It's all yours.
Great. Oh, thank you so much, Theresa.
You're very welcome.
This is just a wonderful opportunity. And I just have to say, your story is so universal and just resonated with me. I feel like it is the hills and valleys of life where we really learn and we grow and we come into our own. And so often I feel like we're on paths that we're laying out for us, and doing the things that we were kind of supposed to do, and then feeling like, well, I'm not satisfied, I'm not happy, because we're not pursuing what we really, want to do. And sometimes I think it takes adversity to find our passion and to find our voice. But one of the other things that you said, and we did meet because we have a mutual friend, and those relationships are so key in all business, but especially entertainment. And a lot of people ask me how I got started, how I got my first big break. I think, what's interesting about my story is that, and hopefully this will give hope and encouragement to other people, the definition of luck is preparation meets opportunity. And I think what happened for me was certainly being very prepared, and an opportunity presented itself. But I knew I wanted to, I'll go back a little bit. In college, I knew I was a cinema television major and I studied that, but I wasn't quite sure if I wanted to be a writer or not. I did a lot of acting, but I come from an improv background. And so I wasn't quite sure, like, how do you do improv for a living, I had to kind of figure that out, other than being on Saturday Night Live. And so what I really came to understand, I was in an improv troupe at USC, was improv is really writing. I was really writing these characters, creating them, giving voice to them. And so while I was at USC, there was an opportunity to apply for an internship through the Television Academy. And I had a lot of friends who were writing majors and they were applying. And I thought, I'll try that too. Like, I think I can do that. And I was a big Seinfeld fan. And so I wrote an episode of Seinfeld. And I'll never forget, my brother played baseball for San Diego State. And I find baseball a little boring. I don't know about you, but I love other sports. With baseball, there's just a lot of just sitting around waiting for something to happen. And so he had a game and he was playing USC that day. And I took my notepad, my pen, and I literally wrote that Seinfeld script during his baseball game. I don't know how many innings it was. It was probably like lots of innings. I don't know, 9. I don't know how many innings baseball goes. But I was a finalist for the Television Academy, and I started having meetings with TV producers while I was in college. And so then I kind of realized, okay, this is what I want to do and what I'm going to try to do. And I only took a couple writing classes at USC, but then I continued writing classes outside of SC once I graduated. And I got my first sort of big break. I was an assistant, and I worked for a TV writer producer. He was a showrunner. And I used to talk to his agent's assistant on the phone every day. And agents' assistants don't want to be assistants forever. Like, all assistants want to become something else. They want to be agents. And so I had written a screenplay and I had given it to my boss, who liked it. And I was talking to this assistant one day and I said, look, I wrote the screenplay. It's really good. And it's really funny. And my boss likes it and you should read it. And he was like, great. And he read it and he liked it. And he said, I want to do something with this, because he was ambitious. And he got it optioned by a small production company. And from there, it got optioned again by Spike Lee's company. And so nothing really happened. The movie didn't get made, but the amazing and wonderful thing that happened was that I met an executive at Spike Lee's company who I'm friends with to this day, and her name is Arlene Gibbs. And we maintained a friendship and, you know, kind of working colleague type of relationship. And after I had my son, my baby was like 10 months old, Arlene called me out of the blue one day. I was literally at home watching Sesame Street, probably nursing or something, so that's all I was doing then. And she said, I just got a call from a producer on Will and Grace, who I know, you know, through these other connections. I'm friendly with her. They're looking for a freelance writer. I didn't, and Arlene had done some writing herself and wanted to write. And she said, you know, I don't have anything, but I know that you want to write for television and you probably have material. And again, here's the luck part, preparation part. I had written a pilot while my son was an infant. I had this idea and I was, you know, I just said I was going to write it and I did. And so this pilot, it was a 1-hour pilot. But there was a lot of comedy in it, and there was also a gay character in it, which you know, obviously resonated with Will and Grace. And so when I got that call from her, I said, "Great!" I was ready. I had the script, sent it in, got a call from them to meet on like a Thursday or something. You know, I went in. I literally got the job in the room to write the freelance script in the room.
Wow.
And they said, come back in a couple days. And, you know, they pitched me the story. I had to do an outline. I had to turn the outline in overnight. Wow. And I wrote the script, and then they hired me to be on staff. And so it was a really great ride. And I've maintained, you know, many of those relationships. And then after Will and Grace, I did go on to another show, which is what most people do. But before I went onto the other show, something a little different happened to me in my career, which led me on this road, which eventually led me to writing my book. So I'm very grateful, although it's been a bumpy ride, and you know, there were some valleys that I didn't anticipate. But in the television industry, and actually next week, they're about to unveil in New York what they have the upfronts for the network. So they're about to unveil all of the shows that will be on the networks for the upcoming television season. But prior to the upfronts, people work tirelessly pitching projects to networks, and the networks buy them, and then they pay you to write a script, and then they develop that. And then if you're, you know, very lucky, and they will make your script into a pilot. And then if they love the pilot and they love the final product, that's when it becomes a show that you see on the air. So that whole process from pitching the pilot to the network, to a studio and to a network, and then actually writing it and then making it is called development. And most writers go into development sort of later in their careers, when they've been on lots of staffs of, you know, many shows and are at the level where they can be a showrunner. It doesn't necessarily have to happen that way. There are exceptions to everything. But, you know, there are definitely people who've never been on a staff at all and sold a show and it gets on a network. But a lot of people, you know, do it in a way in that you are on, you know, different series and then finally develop. Well, after Will and Grace, my agent at the time set up a meeting for me with an executive at HBO. And I knew we were going to talk about kind of development ideas, but I didn't spend a lot of time. Like, I just had some kind of areas in my head, but I didn't have like a full-fledged pitch at all. And so I went to that meeting, and it was a great meeting. This was somebody who I, you know, had known for a while. So again, there was that familiarity and a relationship that had been cultivated over the years. And so it was kind of a low-key meeting, actually. It wasn't like a pitch meeting where you have your presentation ready and you're ready to go. And so I'm telling you this because you all will find this very interesting. So I go to the meeting, we talk about some things. I talk about this idea that, this area that I kind of like. And she's like, oh, I don't think they'll be interested in that. And I said, oh, you guys should do. And a little bit of background, I'm from a sports family, and my dad played professional football for many years. And so we just, we know a lot of people who are in sports. And one person in particular is Grant Hill, and the former professional basketball player. And his mom was in a mom's group of NBA moms. And she would tell my parents these stories about all the NBA moms and, their antics. And my parents would tell me the stories. And so, I kind of threw out that one idea, and the executive was like, I'm not really sure. And then I said, oh, you know what you guys should do? You guys should do a story about these NBA moms, because they're crazy. And they're lots of fun, and they're so different. A lot of them were teenage moms. And so now they, are very young moms, and they've come into a lot of money, and they never had money, and all these sort of interesting characters in the world. And so she said, well, that's really great. That's really interesting. And then our meeting kind of got interrupted by a phone call or something. And then the meeting was over. And as I was driving home, my agent called me and he said, congratulations. And I was like, on what? He said, you sold the pilot. And I said, excuse me? Which one? Like, what are you talking about? So that is how I happened into development.
So I want to ask you, can you hear me okay, Sonja?
Absolutely, yeah.
I want to ask you you mentioned a lot of great materials, and I want to remind everyone, we are on the phones, we are on Google Hangout, but this is also airing live on YouTube. So we will live forever on YouTube. So this is just an awesome, awesome platform. With that said, I want to go back to some things that you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of people in entertainment who are tuning in, who know some of the verbiage that you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
There are some maybe who do not. So
Right.
There are a couple of things I want to backtrack to.
Absolutely.
One are upfronts. Can you explain for the audience again what upfronts really, what that means and what that term is?
Yes.
With regards to writing and development.
Yes. So every mid-May, in New York, all of the major networks, ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox, the CW, converge upon Manhattan, and they present their schedule of network television shows to advertisers. These are all the shows that the network is going to have on their schedule for next year. So, for example, like ABC will have, they'll have like Shonda Rhimes, and maybe they'll have some of the big stars from some of those shows, Kerry Washington, and what are some of the other shows on ABC? Once Upon a Time, like, all of those people will come to New York. The president of ABC, they have these on, big stages. I think someone has it at Radio City Music Hall every year. I'm not quite sure what network that is, but it's a huge presentation to the advertisers to say, this is what we're bringing out for you next year. So you can go and, buy all this time on our network and sell this material. And like Jimmy Kimmel, comes out and does some sort of hosting and their jokes, and it's a big stage show. But it is basically just to present what is going to be on the schedule on the air for the networks next year. And that is when all the people behind the scenes, the people who have, created these shows, who've directed these shows, who've acted in these shows, who've written these shows, they usually find out around this time, if not earlier. But some people find out very late, if they're going to be on the schedule. And I've heard about these meetings because all the executives descend upon New York and kind of get into a war room and decide, what are we going to pick up, what are we going to cancel, all of that. So I've heard lots of interesting stories about those meetings, but that is what the upfronts are.
Awesome. And Another theme that you brought up, I'd love to talk a little bit more about, if you could go a little deeper, is this notion of preparation.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned the Will and Grace and how you got that gig, but you had a script written
Mm-hmm.
already. And when you went to speak to the last, the meeting you just spoke about, you had all ideas already, right? That you had kind of formulated, or maybe some that you had thought about and were just warming over in your mind. And you had a little baby,
I
right?
did.
You have a child. So talk to the audience about, how do you keep yourself basically on your game,
Mm-hmm.
working towards a goal when you don't really have that goal in front of you. Talk
Mm-hmm.
to us a little bit more about, how you prepared yourself when maybe there wasn't anything in front of you
Yeah.
to keep you motivated.
Um, well, I guess, okay. So people always asking me about motivation, and I guess my number one motivation is, I like to have a roof over my head and have a hot meal and pay my phone bill.
Yeah,
So that helps me motivate me. Um,
always.
but yeah, I mean, listen, whatever you are passionate about, whatever it is that you want to do, wherever you want to be, in order to get there, you just got to work. I mean, listen, I don't like to quote Britney Spears, but she has that song, you know, you got to work. You want a Lamborghini, you want a G6 or whatever, you got to work, fill in the blank. Okay. So you just have to work. And I knew that I wanted to be a television writer. I love television. I studied television in college. I watched a lot of television growing up. I love writing rich characters, and that's what for me, that's what television is all about. It's about these characters who you're following every week. And so I knew that where I was, which was unemployed, but I mean, I was, a stay-at-home mom, but I wasn't where I wanted to be in my career. So I knew in order to get there, what I had to do was write myself sort of into where I wanted to be. And at that time, actually, people were still writing what are called spec scripts. And spec scripts are an episode of an existing television show that you come up with yourself. Those aren't as relevant anymore. Producers, agents, managers, those people don't really look at spec scripts anymore. Now it's more about original material. But at the time, I had an idea, for a show, and I was a stay-at-home mom, but I had a little bit of help. I literally had like this teenage babysitter, and she would come and she would have the baby in one room, and I would just write, because I had a story that I had to get out of me. So I think a lot of, people can relate to that.
Yeah.
And, I was passionate, I was determined, I still am. And you just have to maintain that. I can't say anything to give anyone else drive. What drives me is, it probably comes from so many different sources. So I think it's different for everybody. But I wrote that script, and it's entrepreneurship in business and all of that. It's all a leap of faith.
Yeah.
People. I hate Vegas. First of all, I'm allergic to cigarette smoke, and Vegas depresses me. Like, it's depressing when I see people like flossing their teeth in front of a slot machine because they haven't bothered to go home and brush their teeth and bathe. What is that? I don't get that. Anyway, I digress. But okay, so
I'm sorry.
so I don't go to Vegas, but guess what? I don't have to go to Vegas because I play craps every day with my career. but it's more calculated, and because there's a big risk, but it's more calculated. Because I'm working towards a goal, and you just have to have faith and trust and belief, and know that if this is, what you were put on this earth to do, if that's your purpose, then God will make a way out of no way. And listen, I got that job on Will and Grace. I always tell people, people are like, oh, you can go in the side door, you can go in the back door, whatever. I went in through like the upstairs attic window and down through, nobody saw me coming. Nobody knew who I was. I wasn't on anybody's radar, but like the moms at my Mommy and Me music class. Okay. So I went in, like, agents were swarming me because I got this job through a way that no one ever expected. So faith, trust, belief, and certainly preparation. But you know what? Here's the thing. Follow your gut. Earlier, Theresa, you were talking about people will always tell you, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that, you should do it this way, you should do it that way. Well, my gut was telling me, you have to write this script. Those characters were waking me up in the middle of the night. Like, I had to write it. And that script, not only did it get me that job, it got me in other doors, I wrote it from my heart. It was passion. And so that's to answer your question in a long, winding way. That's
I love it, though. You brought up so many things with regards to believing when you have no reason to believe. There's nothing solid or concrete in front of you. And like you said, sometimes you just have not sometimes, a lot of the times, you really have to take a leap of faith.
Well, that's the definition of faith. It's believing in things that are unseen.
Exactly. And I want to take a tiny segue, piggybacking on this notion of faith, believing, preparation, and talk to the audience about agents.
Oh.
So we had a question come in.
Okay.
How do you get an agent? And you may have mentioned it, forgive me if you did, when you received the Will and Grace position, did you have an agent, or was it just by way of a friend? Okay, so
Nope.
There, right? So talk to us about getting an agent. Is it that notion of the chicken before the egg? You really have to be working before an agent will even look at you, or can you not have worked in Hollywood at all and get an agent? Can you just talk to us about that whole situation?
Yeah. For sure. These are, my opinions, and also my experience and the experience of, other people. So yeah, I got my Will and Grace job. I didn't have any representation. As I said, I came in through the dog chute that's like upstairs and around, you know what I mean? Honestly.
Yeah.
So my ex-husband at the time had friends who were managers who were kind of paying attention to me, but barely. I was like the last call, like they would call me at 7:45 at night or something, if they call me back at all. And so, no, as I said, Arlene called me with the Will and Grace thing. I had that job. Nobody knew about it. I didn't have an agent. I didn't have a manager. I didn't have anybody. I didn't have a lawyer. No one. Of course, afterwards, swarms of people. They're like flies on a dead body. They just come, to ravage and pick away and try to get their 10%. God bless agents. I'm not, saying anything against them. But so yeah, so the agent game has changed since I first started in this business. I, started on Will and Grace at 2003. You still don't need an agent to get a job if you have relationships. I've heard of crazy stories. I heard of a story about a writer a showrunner met her at a party, and she was like funny and entertaining at a party. And then next thing she knew, she was writing on a network television show. Wow. So there are always going to be like those crazy stories. I tell my students not to be focused on trying to get an agent. I also think that you need to work on your material, and you need to have like a body of really great original material, because as I said, nobody's really looking at specs anymore, which would be like an existing episode of a show. Like, for example, I would not advise anyone to write their idea for an episode of like Grey's Anatomy or I can't think of another. I can only think of Shonda Rhimes shows for some reason, or Scandal,
And
or How to Get Away with Murder.
Like that.
But all are great shows. But if you want to, be considered in this business, most people don't read that. They read that for some of the programs. I think for like the Disney Fellowship program and maybe for the Warner Brothers program, they'll read a spec.
Yeah.
But if you want to get a job or an agent or some kind of representation, they really want to see original material, because that's what it's all about. And people are looking at things from, I've heard people, they look at plays, they look at short stories, and certainly scripts, of course. But my advice is not to necessarily focus on getting an agent, because focus on building relationships and focus on building a great body of work. And when you build relationships and you build a great body of work, the right people will come into your life who can get you to good representation. You may have a great script, no agent, but your roommate knows somebody who works at, some production company who has a deal at Warner Brothers. So you get them that script and they read it and they know a great agent. And then they say, look, I read this writer, up and coming, whatever, you should read them. So that's what I would recommend. I always recommend getting kind of referrals from people, because that speaks volumes. And, once you get your job, the agents will come to you for sure. Mm-hmm. But it is possible to get a job without an agent. It's possible to get, meetings and indoors without agents. Once you are working or have been working, especially in television, it is important to have an agent, because they're the ones who can get you kind of in the door for a lot of the meetings for TV staffing jobs. But focus on your work, focus on your relationships, focus on meeting people.
Awesome. So with that, again, to just keep going with that notion, some people may say, well, I know nobody in Hollywood. I know no producers, no TV writers, no film writers. I'm in the middle of Ohio.
That's where I'm from. Ohio. Go Buckeyes.
That's where you're from?
I'm from Cleveland.
How did I not know that?
I don't know.
Yay. Okay. So, but you're in LA. Right? So what would you recommend to someone who is on the outside with a dream, with a passion? They're waking up being, in the middle of the night with these characters speaking to them, and all they want is one person in Hollywood who can give them, that big break. What would you recommend?
I would recommend, what's that?
Short of moving to Hollywood.
Short of moving to Hollywood, for sure, which, you don't necessarily want to do. I would recommend having that great body of work first and foremost. Once you have your work and you have it, in a great place, here's the thing. So I'm from Ohio, and, there are less than 6 degrees of separation from so many people. So I guarantee you that, there's somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody who might know me, and or somebody else like me who's from Pennsylvania but lives out here, or who's from North Dakota, who lives out here. I was mentoring a student, and she was living in upstate New York, but she did come out here for a short period of time. But she found out that at the school where she was teaching, one of the other teachers knew one of, I don't know what the woman's title was, but someone who was like very high up at ABC. You know, I don't know if it was CEO or whatever, but anyway, she knew this person. And so she put this girl who was in New York, who eventually came out here, but even before she came out here, in touch with, you know, somebody who was at ABC, who then put her in touch with other people. And so I would just say, you know, just like when you're looking for any kind of job, you just kind of have to get the word out, ask everyone you know. Social media is so great for that, because you may have, you know, someone who you graduated from high school with or like middle school with, who you're in touch with on social media, who, you know, is married to somebody who works at a network. And I hear about these kinds of stories all the time, and some people are really wonderful and generous with their time, and some people aren't. But, you know, I would put the word out, and I would ask to see who knows somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody who can put you in touch with somebody, so you can just get some guidance and talk to someone. You know, in terms of like just sending out, like, I don't know if people still send out query letters. I'm not quite sure how that works. But, you know, you can like track down the names and the addresses of these agencies, and they do have departments that read. So, you know, it may be possible to submit sort of like that, like blindly without knowing anyone. But I would first see who you know, who knows somebody else, because we're just all too interconnected, especially with social media, that I mean, I really think that even if you think there isn't anyone you know, there's somebody who, you know, knows. I have a friend working out here who's from the middle of Iowa, you know, and but she's working in the industry. So I'm sure there's someone who's in Iowa who maybe they don't know her, but like their cousin went to church with them. And, you know, I mean, those kind of relationships, that's
true.
You know, that kind of thing happens.
Yes. Before we get to your book, we're going to do that next. Can you talk to the audience about what you feel makes a great story? And I know that's a big question. You drill into it however you want to drill into it.
Mm-hmm.
I know you've done stand-up, or you did improv.
Improv, not stand-up.
Maybe, again, in the audience that I have, there are a lot of writers.
Mm-hmm.
Many of my clients are aspiring, and I mean book writers.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that would be in the self-development field. What I tend to think that there is a common theme throughout any type of book, any industry, when it comes to what makes a good book.
Mm-hmm.
Right? What makes great writing? What makes a book stay around year after year after year and really have a long shelf life? Can you talk to us about that again? Drill into it however you need to drill into it.
Well, I guess if I think about classic literature, and I think about, you know, some of these characters from like Edith Wharton novels who stick with me, or, you know, goodness, just like, I don't know, for some reason Huckleberry Finn is coming to mind. Maybe it's because my son was going to read it or something. But for me, what makes great writing, it really starts with the character, because you're following their journey. You know, I don't care if it's Luke Skywalker and he's going through space. I don't care if it's, you know, what is the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and like those characters. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's certainly hallmarks to stories, and you know, we can look at Aristotle, and we can look at good and evil and heroes and anti-heroes, and protagonists and antagonists. And yes, of course, you need to have all of those things that build to a climax, and then the denouement, and all of those, the structure part. But then they're great films and pieces of literature that deconstruct structure and that still work. But for me, it really starts with character. I mean, it starts with who this person is and what their journey is and what I'm, following. There's a wonderful book I read, Bastard Out of Carolina. And of course I'm forgetting the author's name, but I just, yes, that story stays with me, but the little girl who was the bastard out of Carolina, I live with her character. I feel like when you are reading a book, and you can't put it down, it's because you don't want to be away from those people and their story and what's happening. But the thing is, it's like you're attached to them, and you are invested in them. Yes, their story is obviously compelling and interesting and takes you on some sort of journey. That whether it's a cathartic journey for you, whatever the journey is, but you're drawn to those people and those characters. I always, I'm probably dating myself, but when I was a kid, my dad watched a lot. He watched soap operas, and he got me into soap operas, and like the nighttime soap operas too. And so I was a kid when Dallas was on, and Who Shot JR was like the talk of the world, and we had to all wait. We had to wait all summer to find out who shot JR. And we were also invested in JR and JR Ewing. You know what I mean? And it's just like, he was whatever he was, like alcoholic, womanizer, and manipulative and conniving and all of those things. But, we loved him, we loved to hate him. And that's what a good writing is, because you're going on this journey with JR. And you're going to see what he's going to do today, who he's going to do it to, how he's going to get away with it, just like you are, in any wonderful novel. Mm-hmm. So awesome. That's for me. And then one thing I just wanted to say is that, a lot of people might think, oh, it's glamorous, I'm going to write a novel not a novel, I'm going to write a screenplay or something like that, or maybe it's a TV show. And I always say to my students that, you may have this fantastic idea, and because you're in Hollywood, or because Hollywood's so shiny and new, you think it's supposed to be a screenplay, or you think it's supposed to be a television show. But maybe it's a novel. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's a short story. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's something else. And so really, I think examine what it is that you want to write, and don't try to put it into a mold because you think you want it to be this. Make sure that's really what it is.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. So really going back to who you really are, mm-hmm. and what you really want to do, what your message is, and then building the path or the foundation for that, right? So if I want a house on the hill, I decide that that's what I want to do first, and then I get architects and those guys to come and help me design a house.
Yeah, or design it yourself.
With writing, right? If I want a house in wherever, the valley, same thing. That house is going to be a little different than a house on the hill. Mm-hmm. So the way you construct the house will be a little different. I guess I'm picking up that writing is the same. A lot of people are stuck on, like you said, I want to write for film, so I need to write a full-length script, or mm-hmm. I want to write for TV, so I have to write a spec. I think what I hear you saying is think outside the box. Really work on your story, work on your characters, mm-hmm. work on your message, work on what's trying to come out of you.
Yeah.
And then let the structure build, well, not the structure, but let the foundation build from that. Let the skeleton of it, whether it's a script or a book or a short story, build from that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get too convoluted in this, but I guess what I'm saying is, and this is part of not listening to anybody else in a way, not letting anybody else tell you. Pardon?
Do you, in short?
Yeah, not letting anyone else tell you what, your piece of art or your story or your characters are, what they should be. Because somebody who only wants to make feature films will say, well, how can we make this into a movie?
Yeah.
But it's really a TV show. These people this isn't one story that's going to end after, 90 pages. Like, these are people that just need to keep going. Mm-hmm. My book, I had written a lot of it and was kind of trying to figure out what is it. And I was advised by some people to, just make it into fiction. Mm-hmm. And some parts of the book are fiction, but it's mostly my stories and my girlfriend's stories kind of compiled. But it wasn't working as fiction. It wasn't working as fiction. That's never what it was going to be. It absolutely will work as a television show. But in terms of, a bunch of characters going on this one journey that has a beginning, middle, and end that, ends this one story, it wasn't ever going to be that. It's like ongoing. It's life. That's how I see television. These are stories that are happening to us every day and continue to happen as life continues. So.
Awesome. About the book, go ahead and tell us about the book. Yay! And let's do this. For the next person who asks a question on any platform, we will give you a free copy of the book. So if you have a question, gifted from TheresaC TV, it's on me. Go ahead if you have a question, get yourself ready. The number is 425-440-5100. Use code 196792. Press *2. When you do all of that, press *2. Press *2 to go ahead and let Sonja know you have a question. You can post it in the Google Hangout or also on the Facebook group, Women Entrepreneurs International. Again, Women Entrepreneurs International. So Sonja, tell us all about the book, please. We want the full rundown.
The book. Okay, so I'm incredibly proud of this book. It's definitely been years in the making. I got the idea for the title, I think 10 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, it was actually back when I was developing that project for HBO, and I was talking to somebody who I was doing some research, and that person told me a really funny story where she lovingly and jokingly used the term Negro, and I was like, I have not heard that one in a while. And just, because of some things that I was going through personally and some things that, some girlfriends were going through, there was this sort of common thread. And while I was in college, I had one of my roommate's boyfriends he wasn't in a great place in his life, and he was out of college and he didn't have a job, and some things that he thought he was going to do did not work out. And I think I was finishing college or something. I was working, like I had a job, and I, was sharing this apartment with two roommates, but this boyfriend had basically moved in and he wasn't paying rent. And he was in the living room all the time on the couch, watching the cable that I was paying for, eating the food. And he was like depressed, and so the lights would be off. And I mean, this Negro was always on the couch. And so, and then I have other friends like this. What's really sad is that this is kind of, it's sort of universal. I think a lot of people can relate to this. And so anyway, that gave me the idea for the title. And I, at first, just kind of started writing about some things in my life that I saw, and a lot of things that, as a young mom, I was seeing, like a lot of dads who wouldn't make play dates with me because they were like, well, my wife takes care of all that. I'm like, well, where's your wife? Well, she's at work. So you can't make a play date? Like, give your wife a break, you know? So I was just getting mad, and, you know, I felt like as women, we were not valuing ourselves. And I felt like it was becoming more important to be linked with a man, to be part of a couple, to be able to say you have a man or you're with somebody, than it was, you know, to actually be with somebody of value, of worth. You know what I mean? And I have a cousin who told me something that I put in the book, and she told me this many years ago. I was like 19 years old. And she said that, and I have a title, a chapter title in my book that's called "Dick is Not an Endangered Species." And to be crass and frank and but honest, it's not. And, you know, my cousin was like, look, you want a quality man, you can get dick anywhere.
Yeah.
And it's true. Like, dick is like Starbucks. There's one on every corner. So I just feel like as women, we need to stop putting up with this BS from men. Like, I feel like we make excuses for men that we would never make for girlfriends. And we do all of these things that devalue ourselves. And I have friends who, you know, have graduated from Ivy League colleges, who have multiple degrees, and will have these horror stories with guys. And it's just not worth it. And so I started writing this book, and it really was a journey for me, because listen, I'm just as culpable as, you know, a lot of these stories are my stories for sure. And I basically just came to a place, and I'm still absolutely a work in progress. I came to a place of knowing that I'm enough, and that I don't want to be, you know, with somebody just to be with somebody. And I also realized that in many ways, I wasn't valuing myself in these relationships because out of fear, like I just wanted to be with somebody and make things work, or a variety of other reasons. And so I wasn't valuing myself in relationships, but I also wasn't valuing myself in other areas of my life, like in my career. So I would sort of let other people guide and kind of take my career in ways that I didn't want it to go. And so I really had to find my voice, you know, just in life, to attract better people, both romantically and in business.
Awesome. So I do have some questions for you, and I'll more than likely probably choose some folks from our Facebook group to gift the book to. Is the book for women only, for men, for both? Can you talk to us about that?
You know, I absolutely think men should read this book. I think they will learn a lot. The veil will be lifted in a way. It's definitely, I see this book because the book is super funny. And I feel like this is a book, like, you have a glass of wine, you sit around, you get your girlfriends together, and you start reading, and you start laughing out loud because you're like, yes, I dated him, and then I dated him again in my 20s and my 40s, and I'm not going to date him anymore, you know? And so I think actually anyone can enjoy it. I definitely think it appeals to women, it's pink.
Hold the cover up again, Sonja, so everyone can.
Everybody see it?
There we go. With the nice circa 1977 sofa,
Yes.
maybe, or 1987. Pick your decade.
Yeah. And the subtitle is, look, it's not just about Black men, okay? Because I cover all ethnicities.
Yes. Calm down, everybody. Just calm down. It's about all. It's a very universal subject matter.
Yeah.
Women empowerment and how we can really, do ourselves without feeling as though we need to be validated by a man.
Absolutely. And just not, after I got divorced, tons of people just set me up on dates. Mm-hmm. And I felt like they were doing it because they felt like that was the antidote to being divorced, was like introduce you to a new guy. And I describe it as my old bachelorette dating period. Because but without Chris Harrison and the rose ceremony, and without a casting agency, because I was getting guys it was like the Ross half price bin sale. Those were the kind of guys I was getting. And I said yes to so many of them because I just was lost and feeling like that's what I had to do. And, a lot of those bad date stories are definitely in here and are entertaining. But yeah, a man is not necessarily the answer. And I love men. I think it's great. Mm-hmm. It's wonderful to be in a relationship, and I have enjoyed many relationships. I think it's really important to shore yourself up and know who you are and what you want and take care of you, before you go out there and sort of add to yourself.
Awesome. Another question coming in. Do you see the book fit for TV or for film? And can you explain which format or which venue, can you go a little deeper into that?
Yeah, I definitely see this as a TV show. I mean, I have, stories about certain friends in here and myself, who would represent specific characters. I have I have a white girlfriend who was married to a white guy for many years. But interestingly enough, when we were growing up, she only dated Black guys. But then she married this white guy. And I just have to say that adage is true. Once you go Black, you never go back. That's gospel truth, because once she got divorced, it's only been Black men. So, and then I have a character who is brilliant, but makes horrible decisions in terms of men. I think I have all of those sort of universal characters, and then probably the one who represents me. And because this is an ongoing story, because we're always, everyone's always trying to find love and romance and all of that, and try and find yourself as well. I certainly see this as an ongoing TV series.
Awesome. So with that said, for TV, who would play the main character? Is that something you want to?
You're not the first person who's asked me this. And I cannot answer that. I really, in terms of an actress, I don't really have a prototype.
Maybe you.
No.
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 Okay. But no, you're not, no names.
I can't, really, I don't have, there's no one who pops out in my mind, but I haven't given it a ton of thought though.
Okay. Any sequels maybe?
To the book?
Yes.
Yeah. So I have this idea for another book, and there was a portion from this book that I omitted because I didn't really feel like it fit. And I wrote it with my ex-boyfriend, and it was sort of about, that portion was titled "What My Boyfriend Told Me About Men Dating in Relationships." Mm-hmm. And so I have an idea for another book that includes that, and sort of, more maybe geared towards men, but women will absolutely love it. And that book is called Men Love Boobs.
And yes, they
Yes,
do.
they do.
That's a great title for a follow-up book.
Yeah.
I love it. Also, as a TV show or film?
Maybe a film for that one.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah,
it might be
I
a
could
story
see
that ends. Yeah.
So, what's your vision for this? If it's as TV, is it a lot? Is it similar to Girlfriends? Remember that show that
Mm-hmm.
we all loved, or
Yeah.
is it more like Sex and the City? Give the audience, some feel for the environment that the ladies are living in and operating in the book.
I would say it's definitely Los Angeles because
Yeah.
there's so many of my dating stories and my girlfriend's dating stories that are so specific to LA. I have a great story in here called Power 106 about a guy who
Shout out to Big Boy, who's no longer there.
Yeah, and I know, but about a guy who was going to take me to a movie premiere date,
Mm-hmm.
and he was weird, had all of his issues you can read about in the book. But we get to the movie premiere, and it was for Mission Impossible 3, and this is back when Tommy, what's his name? I want to keep calling him Tommy. Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
This is when he had jumped on the couch for Katie Holmes.
Yeah.
And they just had Surrey. And so he was like, I need to pick you up kind of early at 4:30 or something. And most movies premieres don't start till 7:30 or 8. But I was like, well, Tom Cruise, they had just had a baby, Scientology, maybe it's like a Scientology Sabbath something. I'm not going to ask any questions. I'm going to a movie premiere, And we get there and he's like completely lost. He doesn't have the golden ticket that everybody has to get into the movie premiere. There's this huge swarm of people who are all wearing Power 106 t-shirts and with Big Boy and waving their Power 106 stuff because they're all there for the movie and there's paparazzi. And so my date, he gets on his cell phone because he's like, let me call my friend because his friend was supposed to be holding our seats or something. And so all of a sudden I noticed this guy who's in the sea of Power 106 people waving at us. And so my date says, he gets off the phone, he's like, well, see, that's my friend over there. And I said, oh, okay. He said, we don't exactly have tickets to the movie premiere. But what we can do is we can wait in line to get into the movie premiere with all those Power 106 people. And he said, but the only thing is my friend's at the front of the line. We can't even wait in line there. We've got to go all the way around the corner that went to Santa Barbara or something. And I was like in heels and I had gotten my hair did. Like I was going to a movie premiere party and he wanted me to wait in line. And he said, and the movie doesn't start until 7:30. It was 4:30. And so I said, you want me to wait in line for 3 hours and wear a Power 106 t-shirt? I don't even know what Power 106 is. You need to take me home right now, which he did. But anyway, that's one of the stories in the book. But Los Angeles men are a certain breed of crazy that you're not going to find in the Midwest because those are real men. I've been to the Midwest. I lived there. My dad's from the Midwest. My brother's from the Midwest. And so there are specific men who are, indigenous to Los Angeles so I see this show as probably aging up a little bit from Sex and the City and certainly from Girlfriends, but being this, group of women and in Los Angeles.
Oh, I love that. I totally just had a vision, of girls going out and men hawking or, just cocktail hour and 80 girls to 5 guys. That type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's another story I write in the book about, I was at another movie premiere party a few years ago and talking to this actor and who was totally interested in me. And he was trying to figure out how old I was. I wasn't going to tell him, but he kept asking me all these questions. And then finally I told him, I said, well, in fact, I just turned 40. And he was like, oh, I got to get some deep. You laughed. That chapter title is called Drive-By Shooting of a 40-Year-Old Woman. Because I was like, I don't know what just happened.
What is the title for that one again? Tell us.
Drive-by shooting of a 40-year-old woman.
That's funny.
Because basically that man fled the scene like he had just shot me and the police were after him as soon as I told him how old I was.
Oh, too funny. I know we talked about maybe reading a snippet from the book. Is there a section that you want to read? Maybe a paragraph that you want to read? It's about 7:21 right now.
Okay.
And I'm fielding some questions. We have time.
Okay.
So I want you to choose a favorite snippet and read that for the audience. I think that would be really fun.
Well, this goes to the topic of women's empowerment. So I'm going to kind of paraphrase also, but this subtitle of this chapter is called "Be Careful Who You Stand Up." So several years ago, something I refer to as serendipitous retribution occurred when a man stood me up. I had reconnected on Facebook with this guy, we're going to call him Terrell for the sake of the story, who I'd sort of dated in my 20s. And he was back in town and he asked me out for a drink on Facebook. And so we made plans to meet at 5:30 on a Wednesday night. We had narrowed down our choices to 2 different locations on Sunset. We agreed to decide on the bar tomorrow and he promised to call. I gave him my phone number, but I didn't have his. But we had a time, a date, a place, 1 of 2 locations. So this was a date. And remember that he asked me out. So Wednesday came along and I didn't hear from him. So I emailed him Wednesday afternoon, but he never responded. And then, once again, and this is, a telltale sign that I was getting stood up. I was waiting and waiting and waiting, didn't hear from him. Anyway, around 5:15 on Wednesday, my girlfriend Abby called me. And by the way, I was supposed to meet the guy at 5:30. So this was 15 minutes before I was supposed to meet him. And she just said, I have this random question for you. And she said, my friend here at work just interviewed that guy Terrell, who you used to date, back in your 20s. And she used Terrell's last name, which was very unique. And I'm not going to say it here, but for the sake of the story, let's call him Terrell Houdini. Okay. So Abby recognized Terrell Houdini's name, and when the producer told her about him, the producer, who was a woman, was considering hiring Terrell for this job, but she just wished that she could get someone to vouch for his character. So my girlfriend's calling me and saying this. I didn't know what to say. This was uncanny. Abby had no idea about my drink date with Terrell. I hadn't mentioned it to her. I literally said, I cannot believe you're calling me and asking me this today. Because if you had called me yesterday or a week ago, I would have easily vouched for his character. But at this moment, he is standing me up. We had a definite drink date at 5:30. It is now 5:25. He promised to call me, but he hasn't called, nor has he responded to my email. And Abby said, everything happens for a reason. It is not just a coincidence that I'm calling you at this moment that he's standing you up. She said, I'm going to tell the producer not to hire him. He's clearly not a man of his word. I felt bad because the economy was tough and people needed jobs. And Abby said, well, he doesn't need this job. And I know this woman isn't going to hire him when I tell her your story, Abby retorted. In fact, when Abby relayed the story to the producer, she said, hell no, he's not getting this job. She ended up hiring a woman. So men, take heed. Now that 40% of women are breadwinners, there's a new club in town, the Good Old Girlfriends Club, where women stick together. So standing a girl up can result in money out of your pocket. The old boys club that used to work against us for so long is now inverted and working against the boys. And that's a true story. So be careful.
Love, love, love. So did he ever come to the date?
He showed up. I mean, he never came to the date. Absolutely not. He totally stood me up. I heard from him a few days later, or maybe a week later. He had said something about going out of town, or I don't know. But no, he absolutely stood me up. We had plans, and yeah.
Yeah, we all have kind of our horror stories, huh? That's a pretty funny one. One last question for you, then we're going to wrap up. I want you to talk about, a little bit more about the book, why you want people to buy it, what they'll get out of it. One other question we have coming in is the stories in your book. Earlier on, you mentioned your ex-husband and you have a son and things like that. Anything prompted inspired from that relationship maybe is an impetus for the book, or any stories in the book, anything that you learned from being married? Maybe I know I have stories.
Yeah, I mean, I learned a ton from being married. I have a whole chapter on divorce that, I hope will really, I hope it'll be a comfort to people who are going through divorce. I mean, it's also entertaining. Pardon?
Yeah. You and I both have that in common. We talked about that as far as divorce and how there can be some type of healing actually from it.
Absolutely. I mean, listen, I think a loss of any kind, if you kind of do it right, will be a gain. And I feel like going through a divorce, I got my master's degree in me. Because I just, it's kind of like you got kind of cut open, you're kind of gutted. And in order to put yourself back together again, you've got to examine everything. And, there's a reason why I got married, and we have an amazing, wonderful child, and I'm so grateful. And, I say something in the book that's completely counterculture, and I don't want people to get it twisted, but I have love for my ex-husband, and I pray for him. He's the father of my child. And you can get to that place during divorce, post-divorce. I think there's so much like anger and pain, but you don't want to be this angry pain body carrying that around. You want to move through it and get through it. That being said, the stories in the book are definitely inspired by my life situations and certainly by girlfriends, but I've been separated, divorced for 11 years. So I've been dating, I wasn't married for that long. And I've been dating, I was dating obviously prior to when I got married and so much after. And so a lot of the stories are really my dating stories. But yeah, the chapter on divorce, is a chapter that you'll laugh and it's funny. But look, I have a subheading in that chapter called "Divorce and the Price is Right," because when you walk into your divorce attorney's office, they are saying, "Are you going to be my showcase showdown, or are you just going to be one little prize that I win on the wheel?" I mean, because people go broke. Like it's a war that cannot be won. Yeah. And I think there's a way to exit gracefully, and I think there's a way to do it with compassion, honestly, and just move on and get your lesson so you don't repeat that class.
I love that. Get your lesson so you do not have to repeat the class. And as you said, you felt as though going through the divorce, you got a master's degree in me. Yeah. I love that. On that note, tell us about the book, why the audience should buy it. Give us some goodies about the book.
Okay. So I went on USC Trojan Television to promote the book, and the college kids were laughing. Like they were producing a live show, and the producers and the audience, the camera people, were having to stifle laughter. And one of the producers afterwards said to me, she's like, "I feel like you're saying everything that we've been thinking, but you're saying it in this way that's like hysterically funny and entertaining." I mean, so I have a chapter called "A Blowjob Strike."
My favorite.
Because my grandfather worked for Republic Steel, and when the boss was not acting right, sometimes the only way that the workers could get their attention was by going on strike. And so I feel like sometimes in order to combat bad behavior and to, negotiate, maybe get what you want, I mean, I offer the idea of a blowjob strike. I'm not saying it's going to happen. It's something that's nice to scare them with. March 14th, as an antithesis or an antidote to Valentine's Day, some guy decided to call it Steak and a Blowjob Day. So I was like, yeah,
right.
I'll see that, Steak and a Blowjob Day and whatever. But you know, I have another chapter called Hardball and Dating. I don't know if you're familiar with the Chris Matthews show, you know, Hardball, but he is unapologetic. I mean, he puts people on blast all the time. And I feel like as women, we're like making excuses for men. We're asking them, you know, surface questions. And really, we need to like play hardball. And before we decide, you know, to let this man into our lives and, you know, become intimate with people. So the book is super funny, super entertaining. You know, I talk about actually how we as women need to come together and not be pitted against each other. Yep. You know, there's all this like fat shaming that's been going on in the news with Kelly Clarkson, who is my hero. I love Kelly Clarkson. And I just feel as if I went to an all-girls school for 12 years. Wow. And I'm still today friends with many of those women who I went to school with. And so I feel like my camaraderie with women is different from a lot of women who see them as competition. Like, you know, my girlfriends are my sisters. And I feel like if we don't pit ourselves against each other and we kind of have more like that Kathy Lee and Hoda relationship, you know, we'll get further. We'll help each other. Mm-hmm. So it's a super fun book. It's one of those books, it's like a quick read. I promise you will laugh out loud. And
like I'm doing during the show.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like you'll laugh out loud. Some people cry. Part 2 of the book is kind of more my personal story. It's where I talk about the divorce, but you'll still laugh about the divorce stuff. Yeah. And you know, the final chapter of my book is called Fight On. And at USC, our fight song, our slogan is Fight On. And I had a friend in college who would always, like right before he would leave, he'd be like, fight on, fight on. And I always thought it was really geeky. But you know what? Fight on is profound. And we have to fight on through every difficulty in life.
Yes.
Because eventually you know, it's about the journey. And there are going to be ups and there are going to be downs. And we have to get our mindset not to focus on the bad things, but just keep fighting on. So the book is empowering. It's hysterically funny. It's heartfelt. You will laugh. You might even shed a tear. And, you know, hopefully you'll want to read it again and again. And next year, this time, we can come talk about the TV show.
Yes. I love that.
And it's on sale on Amazon.
I was going to say, yes.
If you don't have a Kindle, you can get the paperback. So if you go to Amazon.com and put in my name, I think you posted the link as well, right?
I did.
Yeah.
And we'll post again as well, just to make sure that everybody has it.
Yeah.
And and what I'll do, Sonja, also, be courtesy of Be Next Entertainment and TheresaC TV, I will just gift copies and use that as giveaways for part of our campaigns.
Thank you.
To celebrate 5 years, Be Next Entertainment. So yes, as you said, supporting each other, sisters arm in arm, and really shoring each other up. You know, yes. We can make this happen and get this done. Anything new for you that you discovered about yourself as a result of writing the book?
Oh, anything new. Oh my gosh.
Anything, you know, this big transformation. You and I both have gone through these huge transformations. Mm-hmm. Anything new come up for you that was great, that you realized, wow, you know, I'm okay. I'm good.
Yeah.
Anything you want to share with the audience?
You know, so here's what's the irony of this book is that I talk a lot about not a lot, but I talk about fear in this book and how fear really holds us back. And it's like, fear of what people are going to think, fear of what people are going to say, being a people pleaser, fear of the unknown. And we were just talking about faith and, you know, taking that leap of faith and living in faith, really. And so I feel like this is going to sound so funny, but I mean, at least once a week, you know, there's something that happens, because this career is kind of a roller coaster ride. And so there's something that maybe happens in my career or even in my life or even parenting or dating. And I stop myself and I hear myself starting to say like those old sort of patterns, those fear things and wondering. And then I literally have to say, oh my gosh, I need to read my book again. I need to remind myself of how strong I am. And that it's not about thinking about being fearful. It's not about living in fear. You've got to live in faith. Fear is the inversion of faith. It's not about, you know, trying to do something because you're afraid of it. I think we make so many decisions based upon fear. It's not about being concerned that somebody else doesn't approve or that you don't, you know, people are not going to like you no matter what. Who cares? Half the time they're not even thinking about you as much as you think they're thinking about you, to be honest. Everybody is like tunnel ego driven, right? And so really I've got to like lose my ego every day and remind myself of what's important. And so there are things that happen in my life where I'm like, wait a minute, I wrote a whole book about why I shouldn't do that.
I love it. Love. And that's, I believe, the best place to, wonderful, wonderful job. I love that. Best place to close. Thank you so much again, everyone. Sonja, hold your book up one more time.
Woo! Thank you, everyone, for tuning in.
Yes, check this out, Amazon.com.
Sonja Warfield, big fat.
I will be gifting a copy in the Facebook group and also on Google Hangout. And also I'll pick a number of a caller and I'll gift you a book as well. And Sonja, I'm going to take you off screen for just a minute. We're going to wrap up here real quickly. I'm going to do my house cleaning properly. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And everyone, I just want to say thank you for tuning in again to TheresaC TV. We do our best to bring to you and provide for you a platform to ask questions, really learn from those who are doing what you want to do, successful at writing and entertainment and fashion and art. So please support this program. Please support those who are devoting their time to you in the program. And while you're here on the internet, go ahead and check out www.TheresaNCampbell.com, and would love to hear your comments and your feedback in our Facebook group, Women Entrepreneurs International. Again, Women Entrepreneurs International on Facebook. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Have a wonderful evening, everyone. Bye. See you next time.